This is Doug Bender from Diestat.com, and we've got some royalty on the Zoom here tonight. The Epic Myler Roundtable, kind of presented by the National Scholastics Athletic Foundation, along with Runner Space and Diestat. It's a real honor and privilege to see all of you guys here. Jim Ryun, Hobbs Kessler, Drew Hunter, and Alan Webb, and David Mitchell, who's been the announcer for NSAF championship meets for about 20 years. Everybody, welcome. Let me turn it to you, David.
All right, thank you, Doug. It is a neat thrill to have the different eras of the mile come together. As we were preparing to come on, we heard some of them talking to each other about we've never met. Nice to see you, and guys, your excitement is going to make this really terrific for everybody involved. So the reason that we were able to pick you four, because there have been others that have run under 4, but Jim, you were the first high schooler ever to run under 4 minutes. Alan was the man to break his record and do it inside, run under 4 indoors and out. Drew broke Alan's record, and then Hobbs came along to take down Drew. So the others have done it, but they haven't been the high school record holders. So our real focus for this is what you did in high school and what it was like and what your memories are, and now your perspective for those of you that are past that, unlike Hobbs, what your perspective is now on all of that. And we really are interested in hearing you talk to each other and, see where we're at with things too. So I know Doug had some ideas of some connection to start out with to get you talking a little bit.
I just love that you guys span really the history of this entire event and the intersections that you guys share. But I wanted to ask Mr. Ryun right off the bat, you interacted with Roger Bannister at some point in the 60s, correct? I think he became a fan of yours, and I'm curious, what do you remember about meeting Roger Bannister?
Well, he became, in a sense, if you will, the role model everyone pursued, so to speak. I mean, he's the first man to run under 4 minutes. I wish I'd had more presence to ask him more questions, because quite honestly, looking back on it, there were barriers for all of us to get over, and his was, of course, being the first man to run under 4 minutes. And so I wish I had, dove into that a little bit more to ask more of the problems he had to work through. So that was last century, a long time ago.
Did you feel like you studied him a little bit before you made your attempt?
Well, I did, but quite honestly, running was so new for me that I really didn't know in the beginning who Dr. Bannister was. I mean, in less than 2 years, I'm under 4 minutes. And prior to that, I was trying to make the basketball team, and successfully got cut from those. And so Coach Timmons was in the process of not only educating me on the sport, but trying to get me to think about how fast I could run. In fact, after my 4th high school race, and that's four high school miles, we're riding a school bus from Kansas City back to Wichita, and Coach Timmons always had the policy of bringing each of his athletes up to the front. I think he timed the length of the trip, making sure he got all the athletes up. That was my turn. And he said, Jim, you started out, you ran 4:21 for your first race. You've improved here. And so, he made it very, I'm shortening the story up some, but he said, I think you can be the first high school boy to run under 4 minutes. And my first thought was, wow, that's quite an accomplishment, because here I ran 4:21 that day. And like all the other guys, your head hurts, your leg hurt, and you can't really imagine running faster. And then he said, in 1954, Dr. Bannister was the first man to run under 4 minutes. So I began looking up Dr. Bannister and learning more about him. But that's the first time it was presented to me, and that was in the spring of 1963.
Wow. Now I read though that I think it was maybe 67 or so, you were well established by then, that you went to a meet in London, and that Dr. Bannister actually bought a ticket to go to the meet just so he could meet you. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was Old White City Stadium in London. It was the U.S. team racing against the British team, but they opened up the mile, and they had some other milers. Kip Kano from Kenya came in, and so it was a very festive occasion. But yes, he purchased a ticket to watch the meet in White City Stadium in London, England. So
amazing. Jim, obviously, I mean, these other guys can all attest, your status as one of the all-time high school athletes of the century is I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I'm thinking to myself today, like, you probably were the most significant high school athlete to come along since Jesse Owens at the time that you did in the 60s. I mean, obviously one of the first names in that new high school Hall of Fame, and well deserved. Alan, I'm curious, you know, when you began to pursue 4 minutes in the mile, what did someone like Jim Ryun mean to you? At that time, 3:55 was still thought to be like untouchable, you know, when you came along in 2000 and 2001.
Well, Jim was the standard, you know, and you know, you know, I would argue that you still are, Jim. And I gotta say, you're still the one and only person to do it as a junior. So that still stands to this day from that story you just told. So. I mean, you said it was kind of like a far off thing. I didn't really those attempts at even thinking about that didn't come for me until it became a reality, I guess, my sophomore year when that's when I first met you, Jim. When I broke Jim's sophomore class record. Some of those times became a little more real to me, but in my mind, I thought, well, now I have 2 years to try to break 4 minutes. I just wanted to do it at some point in the next 2 years, and I said, okay, that seems like a high but realistic goal. I figured if I didn't do it, then I'd probably get at least a little closer to 4 minutes, and at some point would do it. But you're right, that 3:55 mark was like just so out there that I couldn't really, at that point, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. 4 minutes seemed like a reasonable, logical step at that point. But even then I was like, well, it's probably going to take 2 years to do it. And I was right. It did take 2 years. Cause I mean, doing it running fast at the age of 18. Okay. But 17, Jim, I don't know, man. That was amazing.
Well, we didn't have a lot else to do, so we just ran a lot.
Yeah.
Alan, you knocked the door down, though. I mean, after you did it, 3:53, you're on David Letterman. You go on to break the American record, which still is on the books. And now, you know, the best high school kid every year might have a good chance of being the next one to do it. And I think that the inspiration, you know, that Jim had on his generation, you did the same thing for the people, for the kids in this century. Do you see it that way? You know, are you farther enough down the line that you can turn around and see, like, hey, you know, I did some pretty inspiring things because look what's happened after I've done it.
I still feel like I was a cog in the wheel, you know, like I was just the next progression, you know, of that. You know, and you could see this call sort of explains, hey, somebody's going to come along at some point, you know, that's the way it goes, you know? Yeah, you know, I felt like I did my part, you know, I got the most out of myself, to the best of my ability. And so, yeah, but yes, but I hope I can, you know, have some humility in that, you know, and understand that I'm just part of this process.
So Doug, can I jump in and just say this? What Alan did was broke a 36-year-old record that many thought wouldn't be broken. And I'm only making the point that he's being very gracious here. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure, people saying, well, you know, can you do it? I mean, what was that like?
What was it like to hold the record for 36 years and really have no one even come close?
Well, for me, it was just, I was thrilled to have it, but okay, let me put it this way. I was the first high school boy, and then Marty LaCroix came along and Tim Danielson, and we all thought because there was a natural progression it would continue. But I don't think any of us that ran under 4 minutes at that point thought it would stand that long. And that's why I directed the question to Alan, because I'm sure there was a lot of pressure at different points, people saying, gosh, you're doing something no one's ever done before. And you handled it well, but it's still a real challenge.
I want to bring in Drew Hunter for a moment. You were a little kid when your parents were coaching Alan, right? So can you bring us into that history? And do you remember Alan Webb as a high school kid at South Lakes when you were really small?
Yeah, it really is. So just, the track and field world is really small. We all realize that. The fact that, we all kind of are connected in some ways just speaks to that alone. But yeah, like my parents, when Alan was a freshman at South Lakes, were coaches there. And then, having 4 kids was, that became their new priority, and they moved on from coaching for, a long time after that. And I actually, my parents would tell me I would play in like the long jump pit when Alan would be doing intervals and stuff at practice, which is just so crazy to think about. Obviously I had no concept of, what was really going on at the time. I didn't realize the future American record holder in high school, mile record holder, was, running his 800-meter repeats at the track. But it's really special to, eventually take up running and learn that history. And not even, my parents, I think the great part is like, they never pushed me to do running. They was kind of like, when you're ready to do this, if you want to, like, we feel like you can be good at it. And so like, once I did take it up, like they kind of, they actually had like photo albums, and they'd show me pictures of Alan, and it was really, really cool. And then, when I also started falling in love with the sport, I think like my connection with like Jim Ryun was, I just picked up every single like piece of running literature possible. And I read his book. I like wrote down all his training logs, like everything. I kind of threw myself to it. So to be on a call with 2 people that I have really, really just, looked up to and been inspired by is really, really special. And it's kind of like it just speaks volumes to like what, Jim being the first person to ever do it, and then Alan, running faster. Like I do almost feel like, in terms of like what Alan said, like kind of like just part of the machine to see who can be the best ever to do this. And like I, had one tiny little race that ran a little bit faster than Alan, and like I'm really happy to contribute that. But I just feel like, we're just leaving future generations in a really great spot.
Maybe now we're a few minutes into this, we're going to ask Hobbs Kessler, our rock climber, who's done probably the best combo rock climber miler of all time already at 18 years old, or almost 18 years old. You have a connection with Alan Webb because Ron Warhurst is a big part of your training, and that was Alan's coach as a freshman in college at Michigan. Hobbs, what do these 3 guys mean to you as you've sort of entered into middle distance lore here in the United States?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit like in the presence of royalty right now. I still like don't see myself with these guys, so it's like it's kind of weird, like looking at the screen here and being a part of this group and being invited to this Zoom. So it's pretty exciting, but I haven't really adjusted to like I'm up there yet. So just trying to soak it all in, I guess.
Yeah. Hobbs, though, you shocked everybody because no one really outside of your small circle knew that you were ready to do this. And in the middle of the pandemic, to show up in an empty arena, have this pro race where your training partner, Nick Willis, is right there helping you along the way. And then you do it 3:57, an incredible time. But the lead up for you to just making the attempt, what was challenging about this last, build up for you, as you began to think about breaking 4 minutes?
As far as like training went, it was pretty smooth. There were like no hiccups. I just kind of kept getting fitter and fitter, and getting more comfortable running like 60-second pace. But I only decided like I was gonna go after 4 minutes, like I would say mid December. So kind of shifting like my mindset, like it was really hard for me to like announce the goal, even to like Ron and my folks and my teammates. Like just putting it out there was like the hardest part for me, like saying I want to break 4 minutes. That was the scariest part as far as it all goes. And I remember like talking to my dad the week before the race, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna go for it. I'm like, this is like a great opportunity. I'm gonna try to break 4. He's like kind of told me like, Hobbs, you're gonna break 4 this season. Like, and he wouldn't say that like if he didn't think it was true. So, but definitely like adjusting my brain to being a high school sub 4 miler from a 420 miler.
Yeah, that was actually the first full mile you'd ever raced in high school, and there it was 3:57, because you'd done some 1600s and time trials and things. Hobbs, another thread though is obviously Nick Willis, because that's a peer of Alan Webb. That's a guy who I think won the Wanamaker the same day Drew ran his record at the Armory in 16, and he's kind of like your mentor. So what has Nick Willis meant to you as you sort of climb up the ladder into the sport, and have someone who's so knowledgeable and so grounded and has such a great perspective on everything?
I would just say part of the difference that has kind of set me apart a little bit is being lucky enough to have the guidance of Ron and Nick, and then some of the other elite runners who are really mentoring me in Ann Arbor, who I don't think I get enough credit. But just going through everything with someone who's done it before is like kind of changes it. And like being at the meet in Arkansas with Ron and Nick, I kind of felt like I belonged a little bit more, and like just a little more comfortable. And it's just cool. Like Nick got me into the meet, and he just really looks out for me. And I'm just lucky to have like, I kind of see him as like the poster child for like being like a down to earth pro that's really good at celebrating like young athletes. So to have him, he's also working with a lot of other like Sam Tanner and stuff he's taken under his wing. So
yeah,
to have him, it's just I'm just very lucky and grateful for his contribution to my life.
Obviously Hobbs has Nick. I wondered, the other three of you, who was the best guy you went on a run with when you were in high school?
Oh, wow. You're talking about a more advanced runner. Well, one of them was at the University of Kansas, a guy named Bill Dodson. Another one was Cliff Cushman. These are names nobody would remember because they're from a long, long ago. Cliff Cushman's story is a fascinating one because he was a wonderful cross-country runner, was an Olympic intermediate, 400-meter hurler, and then he became an MIA in Vietnam. But these guys were the ones that offered hope and just encouragement along the way. So,
Alan, did you ever have a chance to hop into a workout with a pro guy in high school?
I remember I did a few workouts early on with Pete Sherry. He ran at Georgetown. He actually helped pace a workout. I remember doing 400s and he did 200s with me, and it was the first workout where I had ever rolled into an interval, like where you're not starting from a standstill. I remember thinking, wow, like advanced to the next level, because we rolled into it instead of just starting from a standstill. So I felt like it was sort of a special moment for me. And he was starting to get into his marathon training, but I remember doing a workout with Pete on the South Lakes track. I think that was actually my junior year. Yeah, that's sort of my first memory of working out with a sort of a high level post collegiate.
How about you, Drew? You must have had some opportunities like that, right?
I think the first thing that came to mind was just when I started hopping in these pro races. I mean, I was doing pre-race runs with Centrowitz and Nick Willis and all these guys. And that was like, I just remember being at these meets and being, like I was like running with the Olympic future Olympic champion and Nick, who'd obviously already had medals and was a 329, 1500 guy. And that was like the first time that I was like, wait a second, I'm in their race. It wasn't like I'm just like going for a run and, chatting with them. And so that was a big deal. And that's kind of, I feel like they were so kind and welcoming and really like made me feel like not just like, a high school kid doing this, but, oh no, like I'm a good runner and I'm a part of this club.
Yeah. All four of you guys broke it for the first time in a similar kind of a race where there was older professional guys around you, and none of you won that race, but everyone had their eyeballs on you nonetheless. Jim, what do you remember about the day at the California relays when you took 8th and you ran 3:59 and it was probably more celebrated than whoever won it that day?
Well, I do remember the last 50 to 100 yards seeming like an eternity. You're doing the best to keep on pace and to stay with the other runners, and then they're just gradually pulling away from you. And so, you're trying to maintain form and all of those things. And actually earlier in the race, I had gotten bumped and actually stepped off on the inside of the track and had to go back to the back of the pack and work my way up. But when I crossed the finish line, I was very disappointed. I thought, wow, I don't know I was 7th, 8th, or 9th. I don't know how. I was way back there. And so Coach Timmons and I are doing a head count. And as we arrived at, I was number 8, they said for the first time, 8 people, I was one teenager and 7 adults, ran under 4 minutes for the first time. And so it was like, it really didn't sink in that night till about midnight. I was in bed sleeping and I thought, wow, this was Coach Timmons' goal. What happens if I adopt that goal and really put some more effort into it? And that's when the excitement of it all began to build. But that night was very special. But as I look back on it now, I finished 8th and I thought maybe I should be disappointed, but it was under 4 minutes.
Well, pretty good for 11th grader. And then the next year you beat Peter Snell, in the AAU championships and ran 3:55. So unreal kind of stuff. Alan, what do you remember about the first time you did it at the Armory? It was obviously, again, it was some good guys to pace you and a good pace for you to run with. But what sort of nerves did you carry into the first time that you're going to really go for it and race the clock?
It was. We tried to. I didn't really make a big deal about it going in, and we kind of did that on purpose because I really didn't know. I wasn't really sure that I was gonna do it there. It was really my first try at it. Be like, well, we're gonna go for it and see what happens, and it really. That's kind of how it felt too. It was, I would say, it was not an easy effort. I actually remember being like I was suffering definitely the whole way after probably 500 meters. I mean, it didn't take long for me to kind of get on the suffer train. And I was definitely I would say I was using my cross country strength at that point. It was not like a speed, oh, I'm all zippy, tuned up type of thing. I just kind of got on that train of the of a professionally paced race and just kind of suffered through it and, squeaked it out, I would say. And my time reflected that. It was 3:59.86, and, it was by the hair of my chinny chin chin kind of thing. But I was ecstatic, and I think Drew can back me up. Is that memorable moment was getting to go to Coogan's afterwards.
Yep.
Coogan's, definitely Coogan's. That was where like the whole Coogan's thing started, because Peter Walsh was like, oh my gosh, you got to come to our restaurant, and so like it was just this thing that happened, So
I talked to Alan on the phone when I broke it at Coogan's.
Yeah. Right, there we go.
Yeah. And then they named a dessert after me. So.
Yep, exactly. There you go, man.
Yeah. So, that's really funny.
Well,
So, one of the things that we've got some questions submitted from folks ahead of time on social media for Runner Space and for NSAF. And a natural follow-up to what each of you has commented on is, which was the bigger barrier, the mental or the physical? And Drew, since you're on right now, you go ahead and you take that one off, and then we'll let the other guys get in.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think for myself, it was definitely like mental, in terms of like, and the reason I say that is preparation wise, like I won Foot Locker. I just set the 3K national record 2 weeks before. Like I was like, I've never been more prepared in my life. I was super strong. I was running intervals I've never done before, I think. But, getting to a point in a race where you come through faster than you've ever come before, and you need to even run faster. I'd never come through 1200 around 3 minutes before. Even in my best races my junior year, when I ran 4:02, I came through in, 3:03, 3:04, and then like just either ran another 60 or, ran a 61. And so it was kind of like, okay, you need to come through 3 flat or faster and keep going. And I think that was more of a barrier, is like, what's it going to feel like at 1200? But then once you put yourself in a race, I was fortunate, just like Alan was saying, where like I had a bunch of other pro guys who were probably going to beat me. So I was just like, put your nose in it, race to win, and see where you can, go from there.
All right, Hobbs, what about you? You kind of hinted at the mental being tough. Which would you say, mental or physical, and why?
I would say, at least for me, the mental is always going to be a little harder, because like you either can physically do it or you can't. But it's like the mental that decides it. So there were a few things like before the race. It was my first track meet in like 2 years, and so just kind of navigating that, I forgot like my singlet at the staging area, and I was just kind of a mess. And I was pretty terrified going into the race, and I was expecting it to hurt really, really bad, and that hurt never really came. So I just deciding, like, I don't remember in the race, but at one point in the race, I was feeling good and I was on pace, and like making the decision that it's going to happen today and to go for it was like the biggest deciding factor. And I would say like the moment I decided I was going to do it was like the moment I did it, and then I just finished the race. You know what I mean?
Great. How about you, Jim? Mental or physical?
Dave, that's a really good question. I don't think you can separate the two. And yet of the two, the mental is obviously, I think, the bigger one. In fact, I was just looking at my running diary. Coach Timmons had us keep a journal of everything that we did. The Monday before I ran under 4 minutes, he had me run 3 times a half mile. First one was 2:02, and then a 1:58, and a 1:58 with a 6:60 jog in between. And he was trying to convince me still at that point that it was possible to do it. And I that was a tough workout, but it also just helped me realize all I got to do is take 2 of those, the last 2 half miles, put them together, and they're under 4 minutes. So he was constantly working with me on the mental aspect of it. And, I've said this a number of times, Coach Timmons was God's gift to me, because he took this tall, skinny kid who hadn't done any running before, and in less than 2 years made him into a 4-minute miler.
That's great. How about you, Alan?
I couldn't separate the two. I gotta completely agree with Jim that I couldn't separate those two because I felt like they totally feed. They one feeds the other, and then it goes in an unbreakable sort of cycle. Like you can't separate your soul from your body until you die, and it's the same thing. You can't separate the mental from the physical, and it's both. So prepare your mind to prepare your body to prepare your mind.
Good answer. Good answer.
So David, let me add this one thing that Coach Timmons always had to work with me on was my attitude. He would often say going into workout, James, you don't get to do this. You don't have to do this. You get to do this. And so there was that constant attitude thing where I had to adjust my attitude if I was going to become a better miler.
Yeah, that's just to bounce off what Jim just said. I my senior year, I kind of started this mantra of like, this is where I want to be and this is what I want to be doing. And just kind of this mantra of like, you have prepared. I mean, gosh, I was running every day before school, every day after school, Friday nights, a lot of my friends would go out and do other things. And I was staying in, going to bed at 9 o'clock, eating, healthy all the time. And it was like, I'm doing all this. Like, I want to be doing this so I can go after barriers and break records. And I really think like that kind of mantra fueled my training. Absolutely. Of, hey, like, you want to be doing this. Like, this is so cool to be in the top 0.00001% of something, and it's cool. It's amazing to be in this club, to be around everyone who's in that same boat.
It is. So we see, looking at you, you've given us some clues. So we'll get back to all the reflection, but tell us a little bit about what's going on for you now or next coming up for you, or where you fit in the sport right now. And Drew, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I got the Olympic trials coming up. Right now I'm qualified in the 15 and the 5K. So to be honest, I'm just figuring out what makes the most sense. I'm coming off a little bit of a rough patch, to be completely transparent. Might as well just be vulnerable with everyone, but just some injury and some other stuff going on. But I'm healthy, training again in Boulder, Colorado currently, and just looking to be in the best possible place end of June.
Great. Hobbs?
Your
sweatshirt tells us something.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to running under Mike Smith at Northern Arizona, but that seems like a whole world away right now. I'm just trying to
about the near future.
Yeah. I don't really know. I'm running the 2 mile. So I try to run a fast 2 mile at the end of March. Because I think that's gonna be my best opportunity, and maybe get some scalps, but we'll see. But I'm kind of like a little bit goalless. I don't really want to focus on time, and I don't know what my season's really gonna look like. So just kind of playing it by ear and keep plugging away. So.
Yeah. How about you, Coach Allen?
So I'm the distance coach and assistant at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and we are, by the grace of God, having an outdoor track meet next week. Praise the Lord that we are going to have outdoor track. Our first track meet is starting on Friday and Saturday, March 19th. So I am super really just feeling blessed that that's going to happen, So
That is exciting. All right, and Jim, how about you? I see on your shirt you got a little logo there.
I do. I'm going to mention that, but I wanted to say something to Drew as he gets ready for the Olympic trials. You make the Olympic team by being in the top 3. You don't have to win. Get on the team, and then you can figure out more what you want to do. But our summers, and we spend a lot of time, my wife, our family, my wife Ann, our daughter Catherine, is working with young runners at Jim Ryan Running Camp. We have one this summer, which is we're full, but we're taking a wait list at this point. And we just love doing these. We've been doing them for 45 plus years, going back to before these guys were born. And it's been delightful because you have all kinds of different talents coming. Some that will go on and make the Olympic team, Ryan Hall among one, I mean, his wife, Sarah. But our goal is to teach them what the vibrance, the excitement of running, and to put it in a Christian atmosphere where they can realize that, you know, running is a great thing to do, but you've got more of your life to live after you finish running. What are you going to do with that? And so we give them the full spectrum, and it's wonderful. They can go to Ryan Running, put the U in the Ryan, ryanrunning.com, and see more of what we do.
Outstanding. So another one of the submitted questions in advance came from John Napolitan, who he's taking photos probably of all of you at one time or another, Jim not running, but probably at a meet because you're able to be found at different events sometimes. And John, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. Basically, if the 4 of you in your peak high school shape were all put on a track for a race, what would your strategy be to beat the others?
Huh.
And whoever feels like they have an answer first can feel free to jump in and give you a little wait time.
I'll tell you what, knowing how quick Alan and Jim and Hobbs, I don't know your 800 PR, but knowing how quick that both of you have run over 800 meters, I think I'm going to have to make it a strength race and take it out hard and, you know, try to run away from you guys. Although currently both of you have way faster PRs than me, so that wouldn't work, but that would be my strategy.
I will address it next. I would say my strategy would be just making sure I stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish. Would I be running against the 3 other guys, or would I be running against the time? You know, and that's always a big part of the value I put in how you're racing. And so, you know, sure, it'd be interesting to race together again, but it'd be interesting more to see when we get all of us together, what we could accomplish in one race, maybe an even faster time than what we can anticipate. So, you know, working together.
I would say try not to get too starstruck and just stay in the race. I can't think of a strategy that would I could really compete. So just put myself in it the best I could.
That's how I feel.
Can't win if you're not close enough to be in striking distance.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
I would, Drew, I'm with you, man. I would just go out and, you know, I just go out hard and try to make it a hang on type of race. Because you give me a little too much credit about being fast. All my best stuff was in the pace, fast from the start races, where it was just really a strength kind of grind fest. And I'd say we you know, go out and try to hang on, and then, you know, even if you lose, then we're all going to run kind of super fast. And then we're all kind of winners, right? And so let's all go out and kind of smash it, and there we go. And I feel like that would give me at least a shot at beating you guys. I'm not saying I could do it, but it would give me a good chance at doing it. And if not, you know,
we all got new PRs.
Yeah, right.
I'll take the first 600.
Maybe you know Garouge out there like you did in 2001 to set the pace, and then you guys can all just see how long you can hang on with him.
So I went off of this because I know, you know, we all had different racing strategies, but to a certain extent, our best races probably were based upon making a good decision in the race. You know, the race that gets a lot of attention is a race against Peter Snell, with about 400 or 500 yards to go, about 300 yards to go. I was moving into a box situation and I had to make a decision to go around Joseph Odegel from Czechoslovakia. Did I want to do it? No. Was I hurting? Yes. But that's what we've all faced at some point, is that moment in a race where you know you have to make a wise decision, and the results were good, but at the time it was painful. And yet you realize looking back on it, that was a wise thing to do. So that would be one of my thoughts on racing you guys, is that, you know, being alert during the race, watching how you're doing, watching the circumstances, monitoring how I would feel. And then, like Alan said, you know, we're all going to run PRs, so let's just make the best race out of it possible.
That's
Jim,
okay. So
Jim, can I ask you a question?
Oh, go ahead.
So in that race, you said you made a good decision, like within the race, but can you just maybe, did you have a mentality going in of like sort of already deciding that you were going to be prepared for that, sort of be prepared for that decision, and like kind of ahead of time mentally having that just strength there, you know, inside of, from a mental perspective?
You know, Alan, that's a great question. And my answer would be, I did everything I could to get ready, but I wasn't ready for that decision, other than it happened. And I knew that was the right decision. And, you know, it was one of those moments when, you know, had I not have moved, I would have been boxed in probably, and I would have had to go around other runners. And as it was so tight at the finish. That simple decision made the race as it was, and I wanted that race. But it wasn't something I sat down and, you know, you can't really strategize in that way. And yet I would reflect with you three guys in that the training you do, you pray and hope it will give you the necessary tools at that moment when you get in a race and you have to make a split-second decision, that it'll be the right one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Alan, you jumped right into what I was about to say. Is we asked you to come to us with a question for somebody else on the panel. And Alan, that doesn't necessarily have to count as yours, because I don't think you had that one prepared. That was a follow-up. But we would love to hear what you had in mind, each of you. And Jim, if you'd like to start, go right ahead.
Well, I will say, I want to ask you guys, what was the most difficult barrier you had to overcome? I mean, what was it that became the obstacle that would keep you from becoming who you eventually became? And so I don't know where we go with that question, who wants to answer first, but what was the biggest obstacle for you to overcome?
I'll start.
You're rubbing a chin here.
Yeah.
Go for
Yeah. I think at this point in my career, it's been injuries, to be honest, is just staying healthy and figuring out the right. I think the easy part of our sport is just getting out the door and working hard. Maybe people disagree with me, but I'm like, I want to show up to the starting line and look to the eight guys to my, or, you know, 4 guys to my right, 4 guys to my left, and know that I worked harder or just as hard as all of them. But I think the real barrier has been, am I working too hard, where I show up and I'm tired, or I'm burnt out, or I have an injury. And I think figuring out that balance has definitely been the biggest barrier in my running career. So that's my answer.
Go ahead.
I'd love to go next, because, gosh, Drew, you're that's exactly almost the same struggle that I felt like limited me was did I did too much, or I trained in a way that wasn't like what I should have done, you know, like it was like it made you know, sort of unwise choices from like you know, the work that I did, you know, like getting out and doing work or doing some type of training was never the problem. It was always like, well, what should I be doing? You know, like what training should I be doing that it's going to get me better and not going to make me worse, you know? And by my own fault, I did, you know, made a lot of mistakes, you know? So that was definitely my limit was trying to trying to do too much.
So far I've been lucky to have good genetic talent and really good mentors. So everything's been really smooth so far. The biggest thing for me, I think, was learning to like adjust my mindset, that I'm like this caliber of runner. Starting out kind of where I was year by year, learning to adjust my mindset. So like as a freshman, like I'm gonna break 5 this year, and that was learning to do that. Then like the next year, trying to qualify for the state meet and kind of just keep building on that. And now it's still kind of having a hard time with like seeing myself as like a great high school miler, especially because I identified as like a really good high school runner. So just learning to shift my mindset, to sum it up.
So David, let me just take an opportunity to jump into this, because especially Alan and Drew talked about injuries. Come to the running camp. We'll talk about injuries, how to work through them. However, let me just say this, as I look back over my training diaries, going back to the fall of 1963, I'm reminded that after every workout, we got in the pool and we did running drills in the pool, flutter kicking and other things. We really didn't have injuries. And the second thing I would offer is get off the hard surfaces. We trained on dirt and cinders. We didn't have any real injuries.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of what happens today is you have a lot of runners that are training hard on hard surfaces, and at a certain point, it works against you. Just
Sounds like I need to be at camp.
There you go.
Yeah.
July.
Yeah. I would love that. We'll definitely have to make that work at some point.
He'll put you on the waiting list, Drew.
There you go.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Hey, Hobbs, what's your question for the other panelists?
So I have a few, but my big one that I was hoping to, my biggest takeaway I'm hoping to learn from this is how you guys like learn to navigate kind of like the rat race, like dealing, like there's going to be people better than you and people breaking your records, and just like the healthy balance to like being a competitive athlete, and comparing yourself to your peers versus like kind of letting it drive you go crazy, and how you found a healthy balance.
I'll go first. I think for me, that was a balance that was difficult to come to. And it wasn't until I became a Christian that I started realizing I didn't have to earn the love of others by performing well. My life was measured in tenths of a second. And when I ran well, people loved me. In fact, I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated 7 times. I get all kinds of fan mail. When I didn't run well, I get this hate mail. It was amazing. And so, it was quite an interesting back and forth. But when I became a Christian, I started realizing that God loved me no matter what. And that was a huge balancing factor that really helped me, because there was so much adulation that went with performance that I just needed to know that there was a love out there that wasn't measured in tenths of a second. So it is a challenge. And Hobbs, you got that still to come. The other 2 guys have been through or in the middle of it now. And it's refreshing, rewarding, challenging, but it's part of that maturation that comes as a runner.
Yeah, I'll go next. Jim, that was great. I think I definitely resonated with a lot of the things you just said. Something that, I'll tell you right now is you are way more than a time on a clock. You as a person, I needed to hear that, the first time I started having injuries and bad races was, how are you treating people? How are you helping people? And I think like that was huge for me to realize, is like everyone wants to be your friend and everyone's there when you're, riding those highs. I can only imagine what it's like competing for a gold medal. I mean, I'm not at that level, but Alan and Jim were definitely up there. And so like, everyone's there, but who are the people that are reaching out to you when you have a terrible race? I mean, I just had one of the worst races in my pro career, and who are the people picking me up from that spot, and those are the people that I kind of hold on to and keep throughout.
Yeah, I would say that you have to like what you're doing, you know, and I think you have to enjoy this process, and enjoy the, you know, the gift of running that you have, and if you keep that in perspective, and not what I would call make an idol of the sport of running. You know, these are gifts that we're given. But one of the things that I am so grateful to have Jim come into my life is he's been very, very encouraging to me in my faith in God, and my spiritual journey towards the Christian life. And I will say that is the fulfillment of all of our desires. You know, we will be humbled by the sport of running at one point or another. And so if you put God first, and then running is somewhere below that, it is beneath that, you know, then it can be a holy vocation. It can, you know, we can exercise the gifts that we are given, you know, because I think that at some point we discovered this gift that was given to us. And, you know, you don't reject a gift from God. You say, oh, I've got this gift. This is an amazing gift. I should nurture this gift. But ultimately God wants him to be first, and then everything falls in its proper place after that. Again, Jim has encouraged me in that, and if there's anything I can project today is that order of operations there. And if you keep that, then you'll have this wonderful joy of running, because you'll do it because it's this gift that you have, and it can be an amazing thing that can bring joy to you and others, you know. And you can take all the mistakes that you make and pass them on to the next generation when your body starts to crumble as you get older, you know, and you can be like, hey, well, don't do that. That wasn't really smart. I had made that mistake. You know, you can pass on to the next generation, but keep God first, and then keep everything below that.
So Alan, let me say this. My wife, Ann, is over here listening to everything, and she's really encouraged by what you had to say. So, and I know your wife is very much a runner too, very active right now.
She is. And I got your text and you reminded me. I was like, oh my goodness, Ann, it's 6:57 Central Time. I need to be on this call in like 3 minutes. I need to get moving here.
Well, he's still pretty quick. He made it.
Yes, he did. So, Alan, what's your question for the other panelists?
Well, I kind of got three individual ones. One for each person. I'll start with Drew. I just want to. I'm curious to know. I'm going to give you a good old fashioned track question. What's I don't know if favor is the right word, or like, what's your go-to workout that kind of gives you confidence?
Yeah, great question. I think over my career, it's changed a lot, but something that I feel like is just through and through, like been there since I started running and is now just a staple in, you know, basically every week is mile repeats. I'll always come back to good hard mile repeats. And I think the thing that I love so much about it is like, it can be so versatile. It can be, you know, tempo mile repeats with short rest, or you can be doing 3 by mile starting at 5K pace and cutting down, and it can be the hardest workout. but I just think like that's something that it tests so much of your endurance, and you're out there for 4 laps every time, and like I said, we're all on here because we've been pretty good at running a mile, so I feel like it's only appropriate to say that.
All right. Okay, I have a question for Hobbs. So Hobbs, we have a little connection here. So you're from Ann Arbor. Were you born in Ann Arbor?
I was, yes.
You were born in Ann Arbor. Oh, okay. And I also heard that your middle name is Benjamin. Is that right?
Actually, my first name is Benjamin. My middle name is Hobbs. So.
Oh, okay. So I got that wrong. Okay.
Is your middle name Benjamin?
My middle name is Benjamin, and I was born. I was actually, to be technically right, I was actually born in Ypsilanti. My birth certificate, I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital in Ypsilanti, but our house that we lived in was on the corner of Granger and White. So if you run by that corner,
right by the track, yeah.
80, yep, right by the track. 801 Granger. That's the house that we lived in at the time. So my question for you is, where's your favorite spot to eat in Ann Arbor?
Demos, my favorite spot. I went there this morning after my run.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely my favorite spot. And I would say for all purposes, no one's ever called Benjamin's my middle name, so I'll count it.
All right. Okay. It's close enough. Okay, Jim.
I can't wait for the question. These have been interesting. What do I get?
Okay, so I don't know. I'm not gonna again. I won't say favorite, but I'm gonna ask you, what, I guess currently, maybe either the last day or week, what maybe verse of scripture have you been most recently either studying or read that you're just meditating on, I would say?
Well, let me give you the one. This is kind of an answer you're looking for, because I still sign autographs. I put "Go with God," my name, and then I put John 3 verses 3 to 8, which was a transformational verse for me, in that though I had been churched as a young boy, it wasn't until I became a born-again Christian that I understood what that verse meant when Nicodemus went to see Jesus at night and said, "What must you do to be born again?" And so Jesus kind of spoke to him in a way that made sense, that you've got to commit your life to the Lord. You need to give your soul to the Lord. And that was a transformational moment for me. And that's why I signed my autograph still that way, and had some today I did. So that would be perhaps a moment that would capture that. Good questions, Alan. Wow, you gave some thought to these.
I got 3 minutes to think of that. I thought I had 63 minutes, and I'm like, Julia, I don't know. I have these questions I'm supposed to think of. Please help me.
He's always breaking
reminders.
So I have to comment on this just because, of what Jim and Alan have been talking about. So Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but you gave Alan a Bible when Alan broke 4 minutes. So I saw Alan at Prefontaine my senior year, and I don't even know if I've ever told Alan this, but Alan gave me the Bible that you gave him, and so now I have it. And I need to pass it on to Hobbs at this point, it looks like. But I ran awful at Prefontaine, and I remember, like, Alan, I don't even know if you remember this. We were eating. It was in the Prefontaine kind of dining area, and you came over and you gave me that Bible, and I all day was down in the dumps and kind of like like once you gave me that, I did realize, like, it is so much more than running. Like, there is so much more to it, and that was a very, like, I remember being overstruck with emotion when you did do that to me. And I didn't know at the time that Jim obviously gave it to you, and then, I opened it up and saw that. And so that was a very, very special moment that I hold dear to my heart. So I had to share that. Another crazy connection that all of us seem to have. So, but for my question, I actually had two separate questions. I had one for Hobbs, and then a question for Jim and Alan. I wanted to know, when did you know it was time to hang up the spikes? Obviously, that doesn't apply to Hobbs, but when did you know it's time for me to move on from the sport, in a running capacity at least?
Jim, you want to go ahead?
I'll go first. For me, it was, okay, I had become a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And so having said that, for me to continue on after 1972 meant that I'd had to have a double standard. By that, I mean, if I was going to provide for my family, I'd need to say I wasn't getting paid under the table when I would be. And so I just couldn't handle, it was not going to be a part of my standard at that point in time. But along came professional track. We tried to clean up the sport. It didn't work. But for me, I could have probably run longer, but it became an economic issue. I needed some way. I needed to provide it for my family. They'd made a lot of sacrifices. I didn't want them to make more. Professional track provided for a time. We tried to clean the sport up. It just didn't happen. But you'll know when it's time. I'm hoping and praying it's not injuries. Maybe it'll be more a matter of you feel like you fulfilled what God's given you to do. Because the injuries are challenging. I'm just glad I ran on dirt tracks and didn't have that many injuries. But you two guys particularly have had a lot of trouble, and that is a challenge.
I would say that by the time 2013 was coming to a close, or had come to a close, I stopped. From an economic standpoint, my contract with Nike was coming up, and so I had to, so it was partially this sort of economic issue, but I knew that I could tough it out for a little while and sort of persevere through that, sort of from an economic standpoint. But it was more than that. It was, if you go back and look at the results from 2012, 2013, I wasn't even close to really being one of the top Americans. I was struggling to, make U.S. championship qualifying times. And so my goals had sort of, failed to progress beyond, and so I was going backwards. And I just lost that belief that I was gonna get better, continue to improve in some way, and that belief, it ended. And so, and I kind of felt that, and I just knew that was, I probably wouldn't have said it at the time, but and looking back, it was God telling me, it was like, it's time to move on. It's.
Yeah.
So Drew, let me add one last thing to that. You'll know when it's time, because you no longer feel you can make the sacrifices necessary to get there. And that'll become so clear you won't be able to miss it.
Yeah.
It'll come sooner than you think. Just enjoy it when you can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
And then Hobbs, my question for you is, I just wanted to know, like, growing up and, being in Michigan, and, there was obviously a pretty rich running history there and whatnot. Did you, like, when you were a kid, or when you first started getting into running as a high schooler, were you I was the person that was like, I read every single, I was a running nerd, to put it that way. I read everything running related. I was on DieStat every day. You name it. I was that you, or are you now kind of entering into that because you just burst onto the scene, or are you still just a kid who's just really, really good at this?
the short answer is like I wasn't really that person
Mhm.
for running.
Yeah.
It was until like probably a year ago that I switched my identity from a rock climber to a runner. So all that stuff I was that for rock climbing.
Yeah.
That's like all I thought about. Like going to bed, I would think about it. I just like put all my energy into that. So it's kind of shifted, and I think like people, it's been pretty visible.
Mhm.
Like I think even like a lot of the coaches I was talking to over the summer and stuff could see me as I started getting pulled in more with Ron and those guys, getting more excited about it, and my identity kind of changing from a climber to a runner.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
Great. And Doug, we haven't heard from you for a while. I know you're an intense
I,
listener.
wa- I
And
came
what,
up with a question for Hobbs. I'm curious whether you've gone to the track and Ron Warhurst has ever said to you, "Hey, we're going to do this Alan Webb workout that I did with him back in 2002." Like, has he ever mentioned Alan to you when you've gone to the track?
Um, if he came up and said we're doing a web workout, I think I would get struck with fear because I knew it was gonna hurt. Not yet, not yet. I'm kind
Any
of
Michigan?
doing one on Tuesday, so
Really? Oh, wow.
yeah, try to
Alan,
hang
you
on
must remember a few
the
of
big
those.
dogs. Yeah.
Oh man, those are ouchies. Have fun.
Said mildly.
It's a fun workout. It really is. It's a fun one. And that's kind of what Ron made it fun. I think that's what made Ron a great coach, because he kind of is.
That's what I was about to say. Is it's my favorite workout just because Ron like it was, first of all, I think it's pretty interesting. Maybe get to hit a lot of paces, but he's so excited about it, and that kind of like makes the group excited about, and the aura it has around it. So I think that for me has more presence than any other workout. Like this is I've it's been on the calendar for a while, so I'm looking forward to it.
So I can say something to the other runners in this regard because I'm older. I'm just about to turn 74. At your age, you learn to embrace pain and think it as part of life. At my age, you look back and say, did we really do all of that?
Oh, man.
Hobbs, I wanted to ask you about the Texas qualifier meet. That was a rough one for you because you went down there to run a fast 1500, and then no fault of your own, you get tripped up right there in the first lap, and it's just a kind of a busted trip for you. But you still got up and you ran 3:52 for 1500 after falling down. But how did you? These other three guys have had so many racing experiences, and you're still catching up, and you're going to have to go through the highs and the lows. But how did you feel like you bounced back from that mentally?
Yeah, that was pretty disappointing. I would say I was lucky enough to have a race the next day. So leaving with a good race was good, but just like my dad and Ryan and Nick were like I was like all teary after the race, and Ryan was like, it's okay to cry, like it happens, and just kind of part of the learning curve. But and then I got to race the next day and had a lot of fun doing that, and I've kind of just accepted that as something that happens, and something learned. But it was pretty disappointing.
so Hobbs, you had a natural kind of strength training coming in with the rock climbing. What other, for all of you, what other strength training did you do leading up to the point of breaking the record? And Hobbs, you can start and tell us what you did to prepare for rock climbing, or how rock climbing prepared you.
I think climbing was really possibly like the best thing for me for my running. I don't know how much physical transfer there is. Probably not a lot, but besides like a little strength. But I think the thing that really, really helped me, and there was a lot of transfer running to climbing, was like competing and like the mental side of dealing with nerves and anxiety and learning to be poised and how to handle stuff when stuff goes wrong. Like before a climbing competition or a hard climb and before a race, like nearly identical. So I've had a lot of experience in those situations. So learning to handle myself and stuff like that has been one of the biggest things I have going for me, I'd say.
Jim, how about you? I've seen the pictures of you coming across the finish line. You had some big biceps on you. What kind of strength training did you do?
You know, we in high school, I just limited to the high school. We always did weight training at the end of running, but our weights were not fancy. They were oil cans from the gas station, stuck with the metal bar in the middle, the gas filled with concrete. We had a 30-pound and a 60-pound barbell, and that was pretty much it. And so, you know, our strength training was, I guess you might say, it wasn't very advanced, but it worked. Most of it for us was just making sure we endured the workouts of training, and at the end you do the weightlifting, and that was kind of it. So we did nothing fancy, but it paid dividends as time went along, having some upper body strength.
Alan, how about you? Before you broke the high school record, what was your strength training like?
At in high school, I did some upper body lifting. Didn't do a lot of lower body lifting at that point. That came a little later. But I did swimming was pre-running, formal running training. Did a ton of swimming. I mean, that was you know, Hobbs said his sort of pre-running passion was rock climbing. It was the same for swimming. I mean, that I wanted to make the Olympic team in swimming. My sister brought back a T-shirt from Athens when they got the bid for the 2004 Olympics in 1997. She brought back a shirt, and I still had that shirt in 2004 at the Olympic trials for Athens, but I was there for running. But at that point, I was still swimming. I was doing I was doing what Drew described. Getting up in the morning to run before school and running after. I was doing the same thing, but in swimming, even in up in middle school. So I would say that was where, Hobbs, you mentioned the mental part of it. I felt like when I came to running, I had already done so much of that mental preparation for the races. And I love that stuff. Going to meets and racing, I just learned to like it. I enjoyed getting out there and like Jim, just kind of smashing my head against the wall, because you could do that in swimming and not get hurt. You could jump in there and just go crazy. So just kind of, I felt like it transferred over pretty well. So it wasn't right before 4 minutes, I broke 4 minutes, but it was sort of the prep for the prep, I would say.
All right, and Drew, let's hear your strength, and then Doug, I want to come back to you for a question. Then we're going to get to the big wrap-up question for everybody after that, because we've already kept you on here a long time and enjoyed every minute. But Drew, how about your strength training?
I definitely did a lot of strength training. Just kind of, I'd say the same thing, basic stuff, upper body, lower body, core. But I think a big thing that helped me, I feel like everyone's mentioned something, whether it was lifting after workouts every day, or Hobbs with climbing and Alan with swimming, was I was running hilly routes every single day. I was running hill repeats. My easy runs were tons of elevation. I just live in a valley. I happened to grow up in, a school I went to, Loudon Valley High School. And so a lot of my runs were just hilly runs. And I really do attribute that to a lot of my success as my strength training. It's just getting used to running on hills.
I guess if I was going to ask one last question of everybody, it would just be, all four of you have done amazing things that just drew us all in as fans and made us go, wow, and I'm curious about those moments. And when you go to the starting line on a day where you just feel ready to really do something special, what some of the last things you say to yourself before the gun goes off? What sort of thought do you want to have when you take off on that moment and know that I'm ready to do something great and I'm just about to do it? What do you think of at that moment?
Well, since I'll jump into that one. For the most part, for me, when I went to the starting line, regardless of who I was racing against, so in high school, I'm under 4 minutes. I'm running against runners in high school that might be 4:20, 4:30. But I wanted to give them the respect, knowing that they had trained and earned the right to be there. And so that was really true, even of my racing as the years would go along. Certainly, I was running against better caliber competition, if you will say that. But I wanted to maintain presence to know that I'd done the work, they had done the work. Now let's race. My problem going into most of my races was that I got very nervous before the race. And that was good and bad. It was good in the sense that it got the adrenaline going in the right direction. We talk about that in camp. Adrenaline can be your friend if it works for you, but if it doesn't work for you, it can destroy you. So I constantly worked on making sure the adrenaline, who was right beside me as my friend, would work with me. And yet I wanted to give the respect to the other runners that were there. And then we let the race unfold, depending on whether Coach and I had tried to maybe run against a time or against an individual, and let that particular plan unfold.
I'll go next. To be honest, I'm still really new to this, so I don't really have anything yet. But something I'm really working on is just trying to when I get on the starting line, if my gut tells me something, learning to commit to decisions. If I make a decision, that's it. And if I feel like I got to go, I go. I'm not hesitating.
I said it earlier, but every time I'm on the starting line, no matter what, I always say, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. And I smile after doing that, just to I think all of us just said, nerves are a very, very real thing. And I think sometimes taking a breath and smiling, it really does kind of calm the whole nervous system down, so that you just aren't, like you said, letting all that adrenaline go. My dad would tell me the same thing. What Jin just said is you want that adrenaline to kick in 400 to go, so you can, finish the fastest you've ever run. But if you burn that match too early, you're in trouble. So, and then I just the reason I say I feel like recently I've been trying to practice a lot of gratitude when I'm on the starting line, just gratitude for the opportunity to run, the opportunity to be healthy, the opportunity to represent my sponsor, my family, everyone who's helped me get to the starting line. And that's been kind of a whole mantra that I've been trying to channel this Olympic year.
I would say that in the minutes and even hours and even say days leading up to the race, I would have try to appreciate that moment as this moment that's going to help you be better than you could be on your own, and having, channeling that that feeling, the anticipation of the race as a positive thing, and using that as a positive thing, in any, nervousness or whatever you want to describe, any other word that you want to describe it as, I would always try to turn it into this positive thing and say, this is good for you. This is good. These feelings are good things that are going to help you get the most out of yourself. And then in the moments right beforehand, I actually try to clear my mind and make it just be in the moment and let that race come, and the training will kick in. Like I already knew that I've already done everything I needed to do. And so I would actually try to be as in the moment as I possibly could be, and just wait for that starting gun line the starting gun to go off, because that will, once the gun goes off, everything takes over.
Very good. And we gave you a hint when we were preparing to come in that our final question for you, and then we'll go to a quick closing comment from everybody. Final question is about, how would you like to be remembered in the sport as posterity looks back, the history of track and field, particularly, again, we're still kind of looking at high school, but it's open-ended for whatever you want it to be. I think we ought to start with Hobbs, probably the hardest question for him. So, but it also maybe give everybody else a little bit more time to prepare. And we'll just go youngest to oldest. How do you want to be remembered, Hobbs?
I can say I want to be remembered as more than a guy who ran 3:57 in high school. I hope to have a career in track and field and put down some other good marks, but kind of beyond that, I want to be remembered like Nick and Willis and Kyle and Arbor are, is just people that like celebrate others and just are good for the sport and the growth of the sport, and just good humans in general. So
Drew, on to you.
Yeah, what Hobbs said is kind of spot on with what I would like to be remembered as, is just someone who lifts others up, puts others before myself. And I have a whole team in Boulder, Colorado, and I want all of those men to run their goals just as much as I would want to reach mine, and I want to be able to help them along the way. And I think this goes even beyond running. I think like the relationships we have with the people in the sport, like how you treat someone in just a passing at a meet or whatever, like that translates to how they treat their brother or their significant other or whatever. And I think like just being a positive presence for all the people that I can touch is something that I feel like I am really trying to do, because it does, like we've all mentioned, it does go beyond. I mean, running careers are pretty short in terms of in the grand scheme of life. So I think like if I can kind of do that, that would be the best thing I could ever ask for, being in this world.
I would love to be remembered as another runner that ran his PRs, but ultimately what that really taught me was that the most important thing is our faith in God and my faith in Jesus Christ. That is the most important thing. And if I could be remembered as that person who is a sinner, but ultimately learned through running that is more important than any of those other things, that's how I'd like to be remembered.
Congressman Ryun, you get to answer this one last.
I get to answer this one. I would say that he loved God and that he got to see answers to prayers. For example, when I was cut from the church baseball team and the junior high basketball team, I'd go to bed at night and I'd say, "Dear God, if you got a plan for my life, I'd appreciate if you show up because it's kind of bumpy right now. Oh, by the way, if you could do it in running or some sport, I'd like that." And God gave me this wonderful coach, and then this amazing thing happened. That again, under less than 2 years, I'm on my first Olympic team. I want to be remembered as a guy that loved his wife, Ann, and she endured all kinds of things with me, and not only the running, but the congressional career, and she was faithful. I have 4 wonderful children. I love them, 13 grandchildren, but they also loved his country. And I had the privilege of serving in Congress. Had I not have, as a high school boy, competed against the Russians, the communist country, been put in a single room as a high school boy, and thought of all those evil things that maybe the communists were to come into the room and capture me, I might never have had that dream of serving the country. So all of that would be part of what I want to be remembered for. It's been a wonderful life.
Great answers, guys. So now we'll just have a sentence or two closing thought from everybody, and let Doug wrap it up for us all together. So Hobbs, will go with you again, and then just go up the line again, and then Doug, you can take us home.
I just want to say it's good meeting all you guys. I hope our paths cross in the future, and I hope my brain soaked up some of the wisdom said today. So
yeah, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Jim for setting the bar for all of us. I'm still kind of in shock that I'm on here. Just, reading about all your training and reading about your journey as a runner and man. And that's been very, very inspiring for my career. And then Alan, thank you for the wisdom over the years, me, seeing you at meets, and then obviously interacting as honestly a friend, in terms of just seeing you after meets and you being so encouraging and kind. And I want to thank you for that. And then Hobbs, I just, haven't met you yet, but can't wait to at some point, shake your hand and congratulate you in person on an amazing national record. And I can already tell you're in great hands at Mike Smith at NAU, and I'll be cheering you on. And maybe I'll see you in Flagstaff at some point. So
thank you.
And thank you for putting this on. This is great. Very, very cool thing to do.
And just want to say it was great to see you again, Jim. Tell Anna, say hello. Drew, you too. Say hi to your mom and dad and your whole family. Hobbs, it was just congratulations. This is sort of my, I didn't have any way to contact you until now. So just congrats. And then David and Doug. And then also I gotta say thank you to Josh, who isn't on here as well. Josh and I go way back to my high school days. So thanks to Josh as well. So just gratitude and thankfulness.
I'm going to express pretty much the same thing that Hobbs and Drew and Alan did. I want to thank David and Doug and Josh and actually others who put this all together. I mean, it's the genius of getting the 4 of us together without any real preparation to try and get some answers. And I'm grateful for the time we spent together. And I thank you for the privilege of doing this. And so I hope we do it again sometime. All right. God bless you all. Tracy Sunland as well. He was a contributor to all of this.
Yes,
he was. And Steve Underwood has helped a great deal behind the scenes. He helped connect into Drew. Chris Nickinson is working literally behind the scenes, running this Zoom meeting, and many more that have put the support together. And we're totally grateful. Also, I came in with really high expectations, and you exceeded them by far. So Doug, take us home.
Hey, when a high school boy runs under 4 minutes in a mile, it's one of the most easily relatable things for the rest of the public to understand and appreciate, and it's always it's something that you'll talk about with your friends and neighbors, because it's such a big thing, and only 12 boys have ever done it in the United States. You 4 are some of the very best, and as an observer, I was there when Alan ran 3:53 at Hayward Field, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in that venue. I happened to be there in the armory when Drew did it twice. And again, it's like, it's such an uplifting, exciting moment when you get to see something that's so rare and so wonderful, really. I hope to see Hobbs do it here maybe this spring if things change. And again, real pleasure to talk to Track and Field Royalty tonight. Really appreciate all of your time.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you,
Thank
David.
you. Yeah, it's good meeting you guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. God bless you all.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, bless you too. We'll look forward to this Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. It'll be online, so you can enjoy it and let people know on your social media if you'd be so kind. And those of you on social media, please take a look at some of the other questions that were offered. Maybe you can give a response on there, because there are many that we couldn't get to. There was so much ground to cover with the 4 of you. It was really amazing. We appreciate it greatly.
So,
Thank you.
if you have a minute, I just want to make a comment. I just recently saw the assistant coach's wife under Coach Timmons. Her name is Jean Mitchell, and I can say this for the other 3 guys here as well. She said something as I was walking out the door. She kind of took her hands and put it on my face. She said, "Jim," and I'm addressing it to all 3 of you. She said, "Thank you for having the courage to do what others weren't willing to." And I thought about that some, because that's what you guys have all done. And anyone who's really excelled is that you just decided you wanted to go do it. And it does take courage, but you don't think of it that way. It's just, here's this great opportunity. But I've reflected on that some. There is a certain amount of courage involved in this. And I'm just grateful for the encouragement I've got from people to try and do all of this.
Thank you, Jim.
thanks.
Right.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Well
night.
done, everybody. Well done.